Welcome back to Call to Create. I'm your host, Connie Sokol, and it is such a treat to have Scott Christopher with us today. Hi, Scott.
Hi, Connie. It's a pleasure to be here, truly.
Everybody listening, this is going to be so fun because if you don't know Scott Christopher, this is your lucky day. I'm going to give you the official snapshot and then we are going to dive right in. Scott Christopher is a sought-after actor who has appeared in many network television series, including NCIS, Modern Family, Criminal Minds, Granite Flats, Touched by an Angel, and many others, and movies on Disney Channel, Hallmark, Lifetime, Netflix, and Amazon. He also has appeared on NBC's Today Show, Fox Business Channel, CNBC, and a host of others, and has been quoted in the New York Times, Washington Post, Boston Globe, and again, many others. Are you intimidated yet? Hang on. He also is the author of the best-selling book, People, The Levity Effect, and the 7 Ups of Happiness, and he has a master's in HR management from the University of Connecticut. He also has gone global, motivating thousands of audiences from senior leader retreats to entertaining all staff meetings and helping them to be able to leverage humor to enrich lives at work and at home. And at home, he and his wife, Elizabeth, who is a lovely person, live in Salt Lake and have 5 sons and 2 grandkids. Now, you know, Scott, everything you ever wanted to know or didn't want to know, too bad. We are moving on to this burning question for me. We were talking just a little bit beforehand, and Scott and I have actually known each other from a play at BYU. More on that later, and I can give you all the dirt, honest to Pete, moments that you are going to want to know. But first, we're going to go back to sort of that moment. Doesn't even have to be when you were younger. Just when was that moment or experience that you really did feel this is what I'm meant to do? Because a lot of people may want to do acting, but actually to take that step, that's a whole different game. So tell us, is there a moment or an experience where you kind of feel like that's when I knew, or did it just come on kind of gradual and you fell into it?
You know, I knew when I was anywhere from 3 to 5 years old.
No.
It just was, it was, I'm going to do that. That's who I am. That's what I'm going to do. As a very small child, my sister taught me to read when I was 3. And so I was able to begin to read and interpret copy, scripts, whatever it was at a very young age. And I would pretend and have little scenes in my head. And I wouldn't just walk into the kitchen to get something. There was a camera on me as I'd come into the kitchen and I'd make a peanut butter and jelly. Yeah, you know. So, but I would say that kind of the validating point came many years later when I and my brother, we were fortunate to win a national acting competition at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. And it was sort of like, you know, in fact, we had gone out we'd pushed open the emergency exit door of the Kennedy Center backstage before it was our turn to go compete. And we, 2 elders of Israel, you know, we folded our arms and said a prayer right there on the bank of the Potomac. And I just prayed, we don't care if we win. I mean, it would be great. We could use the money. We were both poor, young marrieds at the time and not to each other. But my prayer was, Father, please just help us to do our best because we've been really rehearsing this and we have yet to come in under the time that's required, which is 5 minutes. You cannot go a 1/10 of a second over, or you're automatically disqualified. We want to do our best and we want to do it in time. And we won the whole thing. I won Best Actor. He won Best Partner. The judges said it was the first time it had ever been unanimous. They all felt they all looked at each other and they were all looking at their watches going, please, please end on time. And they said, well, we all stopped it right when you finished the last word of whatever the scene was. And it was like 4:59 point, you know, it was so dramatic. It could totally be its own little movie. But at that point, it was like, okay. I mean, we're pretty good, you know, just because that's not, I mean, you know, with him, we're together, he makes me pretty good. And I kind of thought, I'll keep trying this, you know. I mean, I wasn't going to change my mind anyway, but that helped validate.
Exactly, that reassurance, right? Yeah. Okay, a little backstory on this, because if I remember this right, correct me if I'm wrong, but we had been in this play called Blessing, and it was quite a play. It was based on sexual abuse. And they were very, very careful on how they did it, very kind of fourth wall and, black and white set. And it was just nothing was shown or anything at all, but just it was a pastor. And I just remember this experience because we would come off stage when you were done with your scene and you would come off stage and you personally did a lot imaginary. Like I remember you planting something. Yeah. I swear I saw the flower you were planting. The way that you went about it, it was incredible. But I remember coming off stage and sitting back in the audience so that it would be easier for the audience to absorb what was going on, and sitting next to a woman who just was bawling, just crying, sobbing. But you really don't know the impact that you had on me, the integrity, the way that you went about things, the focus, the brotherhood, all of those things. And it showed me that acting is it's a vehicle and it's a piece, but the gospel and your testimony is number one. And I've seen that. Has that been that thread that's woven through everything you've done, regardless of the movies and wherever you've been?
Yeah, it's very gratifying to hear you say that, just because it was never an intentional decision to be at all influential, really, in that way. But it was always an intentional, almost a non-decision, because the Lord always came first in our lives. And I'm speaking for my brother and my sisters. I mean, they're not performers, but our little family that consisted of a divorced convert mother. We were born in Michigan. We were raised in Michigan mostly, joined the church there, and then moved west. We just always had that perspective that God is in charge. My mom used to say, after when I was in high school and junior high, and she knew I was going to be an actor, she said, just always trust the Lord, let him be your agent. And practically that didn't work out from a business perspective.
And on a pillow, it sounds so good from a mom, right? Exactly.
Yeah. So, but I mean, it's been a long haul, and I'm still not anywhere near where I envisioned I would be professionally when I was a kid, but spiritually and sort of eternally, I am so where still not there, but I mean, I don't care about the profession. It's like, even to today, I'm older, it's been a long time, and I still will plead with Heavenly Father to point me the direction he wants me to go, because I'm still feel like I'm in flux. I've landed in a few places where I was kind of semi-permanently for work, like regular work. You have to work jobs, of course, but things just are always kind of very fluid. I continue to trust him.
Yeah. And I love that, because I think especially in the arts, and all of our audience listening, well, most of them are in the arts, and they need that reassurance that being in flow and in flux and being fluid and all of that's part of the journey. And that's that tethering to him all the way along. And that as you do that, does it matter that you got an Oscar? No, it really doesn't. It matters that you reach the people that the Lord wants you to reach, and in the way that he wants you to reach them. Which brings me to, your comedy is just spot on, and it's clean. And I remember Jerry Seinfeld saying once that swearing in comedy is a cheat. He said something to the effect that it takes more skill as a comedian to not swear. Have you found that same thing? And where did you get your humor? Is that just natural, or have you developed that as you've gone along?
Well, yeah, I would say that, yeah, it's easy to get a potty laugh, because many of us still have the little child within us who thinks it's funny to giggle at dirty words.
Sixth grader. Yeah.
Yeah. And I will say that there are some comics out there who swear so well. They've taken it to artistic level. And a few come to mind. I won't even mention who they are. There's no need to promote that. But the sense of humor really came from my mother and her family, her perspective of our upbringing, which was quite indigent. In Michigan, for a while there, we lived in government-funded projects. We definitely kind of had experiences in all walks of life growing up. Her example was put the Lord first. So if she felt like we were too latchkey kids, she'd just flat out quit and say, the Lord will provide, or I'll just work part-time. I'm going to be home for you, blah, blah, blah. So with that, her humor, I mean, she was a cackler and a snorter, and, professional level board game player. But it was her humor. And then all of my family, I have another brother, James, he's the only one, and then two sisters, and they're all wickedly funny, both physically. The sisters are physically funny, but also they have the intellectual humor. My mom loved Woody Allen, of all people. And so I loved Woody Allen, and I read his books and I watched his movies, the ones that I could. And so a lot of times you'll see, sometimes it works its way into my, and my brother will be like, you're not from Brooklyn,
Both the accents.
Yeah, exactly. This was not a pretty woman. She looked like something you see in the reptile house at the zoo. We were stealing his humor all the time. So
I can only imagine the dinner table for you guys. Oh my word. I just think that's so fantastic. And that deadpan witty humor is just such a skill. It's so good. And you see that thread in a lot of the work that you did and do, that there's this underlying intelligence in how you go about your humor and your work. So let's talk about that for just a minute. As you stepped into this, it's hard to break into this industry. Was there an experience or a moment where you felt like, okay, finally I got my agent, you're a SAG actor, which is the coveted, right? If I have that correct, that's huge. Was there that feeling like, okay, I finally broken into it? Or was there a moment that was like, do I even still want to do this?
Yeah. Answering that first part of that question about was there a moment there? I would say there was a television program produced by BYU TV called Granite Flats, and it was incredibly well received, and still to this day, one of, if not their highest rated scripted show. They have so many wonderful documentary type shows now, reality shows. But being part of that cast was incredibly motivating. And because the people that they cast in the other roles none of them were LDS, for starters, and most, if not all of them, were seasoned, famous people that I'm now working with and talking and eating lunch with every day. And even some of the ones who were like B or C listers, I still knew who they were. I recognized them from their episode of Seinfeld or that old show in the 80s,
Right.
Not to mention Christopher Lloyd. I mean, Doc Brown. But yeah, so there was that time when I was like, "Gal, this could really work," and I made good friends with one of the actors there, Annie Tedesco, and she was very helpful in kind of connecting me to Los Angeles, and she understood that I had pretty strict values and standards, and that I wasn't looking to just go out there and audition for everything under the sun. But she said, if you get representation, even before you get representation, there are certain things that you can do to get seen. And so she recommended a few of these things, and I went out and I would do them. And I got cast in shows right away where it was, and the casting directors were like, "Who are you? You should be working. Why is this? How old are you?" And at the time I was probably 45 or something. And they're like, "How come you've never been here?"
Wow, that is fantastic. I think it, like you talk about people, right? And the importance of people in your lives. And that is so true in those opening the doors and being where you need to be, and people recognizing who you are and what you'll do. I know I interviewed John Heater at Napoleon Dynamite, and he was talking about just the different connections that he had made and how they knew what roles he would do and what he wouldn't. And it wasn't sort of like, I'm standing on my values, kind of annoying, but more of a respect of, okay, that's great. That's the genre that you're going to play. So it seems like you fell into that. In fact, I was laughing the other day, we were looking for a clean romance show, and up pops Taste of Tuscany trailer. And I went, oh my gosh, that's him. And that was just a few days ago. I was like, oh, it's a sign. This interview is meant to happen. Let's switch gears for just a second, because I know there's people in the audience, they are dying to know what it's like for, first of all, a day in the life of an actor. Just take us through a snapshot, if you would, of what that looks like for you to choose a film, film the film, go to that's a wrap, and then red carpet of the film. I mean, in theory, but kind of that thing, because I've heard anyway, I've just heard a lot of different things of what it can be like versus what we think it's like. So can you take us through just a little snapshot of that?
I mean, from an actor's perspective, usually, unless you're on a project, your day is spent, I know for people who are committed, they're at a gym working out. And
which would be you. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. This is why the camera's only framed to here, nipple high. No, so as an actor, I do very little in terms of the creative process. I've always been very much one that just says, if it's well written, just hand me the script, give me a minute to memorize it, and I'll just come out and play me with these words, roughly in the context of the thing. And that's why the writing process is so critical. When you're actually on set in a production, the day basically looks like sometime the night before the first assistant director calls or texts with your call time on a call sheet, and you look for your name. Like I did an episode of NCIS Los Angeles recently with Chris O'Donnell and LL Cool J. And it was my second episode. They called me back for another one, and which was always nice. And these are the kind of shows that I never thought I would really do because I don't really watch them. But it's like, I put my life in the hands of the Lord and I go, here, let's just see what's out there. And I always read the script beforehand. And I'm not really into cop shows as far as acting goes, but they're good paydays. Thank you, Father. I'll take it. And it's literally no worse than anything anyone says, thinks, or does as a woodworker, an architect, a librarian, every day on the job. It's just that it's seen by a lot of people. So as sensitive spiritual people, we go, am I doing wrong by pretending to smoke? Or whatever, which I really actually haven't done. I just use that as an example, but you have to kind of have the context of it's between me and God, and we'll just leave it at that. And whatever you do today as a school teacher, it's between you and God. It's not between you and me. So you might pretend to smoke, so to speak, by saying a nasty word or coveting your neighbor's car, or you know what I mean? It's like LDS actors get pretty sensitive when people start to judge them. Anyway.
Oh, I can imagine. And I just think, there's that feel. I remember Brigham Young saying it is appropriate for us to portray evil on screen as long as the appropriate consequence is shown as well. So anyway, there's a beautiful quote on that.
I'm not going to call you on that, but I can't imagine Brigham Young said anything about the screen.
I think he was talking about the stage. I think you're absolutely right. Yeah.
He was referring here. He was very prophetic. Let's face it. He knew we would have screens and we would be binging or binging. I don't, they're spelled the same, binging, binging. Anyway, let me get, so yeah, it's always exciting to shoot something in Los Angeles because as a little boy, I grew up watching television series and shows, and I dreamed of being one of the Dukes of Hazzard, or being a guest star on The Love Boat, or being one of, Potsy, Richie, Scotty. Those young actors were my heroes. And when I started to work in and among them and get to know them as adults, like I remember running into the kid who played Kelly Leak on The Bad News Bears, movie from the 70s with Walter Matthau. Not Kelly Leak, Tanner Boyle. He was the short little kid with blonde hair, and he was spitting and swearing, and he was a little brat. And he was an assistant director on something I was in. And I looked at him, and I was sitting in the makeup chair, and he was coming in, bringing a script and bringing some breakfast. And I looked at him and I said, "Were you Tanner Boyle?" And he went, "Shh, don't say anything. Nobody knows. You're the first person." I said, "How could they not know? You're 40, but you still look exactly like Tanner Boyle." And other kids, that grew up, and I see them. I don't even know what I was talking about here, but anyway.
That's hilarious. Well, we were just talking about taking this journey, and I remember what we were talking, the day in the life of filming. You were like, it's always fun.
There you go. So anyway, It's always fun to work in LA because of that, because of so many faces that you see that you go, oh my gosh, I know him. I can't think of his name. And people do that to me all the time, all the time. Hey man, how's it going? It's good. What's been happening? Nothing. And then they go, we don't really know each other, do we? No. Or they'll go, oh, this is my favorite. And my wife loves this one. And they'll go, where do I know you from? You look so familiar. Where do I know you from? And I always say, I don't know. Well, the reason why is because I've been burned. So every actor goes through this, because what you do the first 20 times it happens, you go, best 2 years, or Granite Flats, or something else. You know what I mean? And inevitably they go, what's Granite Flats?
Oh.
Or no, that's not it. Okay. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm not digging anymore.
Then you're embarrassed. Yeah. It's like, I don't know. So I usually just say, I'm not sure. And then my wife will go, he's an actor. And then they'll go, what have you been in? Which is the same kind of leading question, which is, yeah, just stuff. He's been in blah, 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 blah. He's just being, oh. And then sometimes they go, no, I think we were in the same ward in Provo. So
you're like, I'm not touching it. It's good. Yeah. It'll come to you.
You can't win. But anyway, back to the day in the life of, so, you get a trailer, which is great. Usually it's right there at Paramount Studios or Fox or one of those places that I grew up just, oh my gosh, when I first stepped foot onto Universal or Paramount, not the amusement park, but the actual studio. It takes your breath away, because it's something that you have seen and envisioned your whole life doing. The gate arm comes up. Come on in, Mr. Christopher. You're over in studio, blah, blah, blah. It's a sound stage, number 17. And there's the trucks and the catering all outside and all the sets that are built inside. And I remember I auditioned for Modern Family once, and the casting director was so kind, and he had me come in and I read for him, and I said, hey, as I leave, do you mind if I walk around and look at stuff? And he said, oh no, heck yeah, this is a huge lot, go crazy. And I walked into their studio, and I walked through the homes and the sets from Modern Family, and I took pictures, selfies. And then 2 years later, I was cast in Modern Family. And so I was able to come back to the same place and play a very small role. I had like 2 lines, but I didn't care. It was a good payday. It was a clean episode. I didn't say anything that, it embarrassed me. And so, but usually even just 2 lines, you're there all day. Usually the call times are 7 a.m. for makeup and wardrobe. Maybe you'll get a little something to eat. Lately, it's been getting endless COVID tests. And finally in May sometime, they're done. All the COVID tests will end there. But like when I did Modern Family, that particular episode, like I say, 2 lines, I was there 6 to 8 hours, and I spent several hours with the kind of the main cast and got to know Julie Bowen, who plays the mom, very well. And she has 4 sons. I have 5. She was asking about how to raise boys because mine are a little older. She loves the New York Times crossword. She pulled out, as do I do the crossword every day. She pulls a photocopy out of her purse and says, I always make an extra copy of the New York Times crossword in case I meet someone who didn't do it yet and they want to. And she handed it to me, and I went,
gonna frame that. Yeah, that is incredible. That's almost like a living vision board where you did that 2 years before, took the pictures, thought to take the time to do that, and then there you are. I think people listening can feel the inspiration of that, of you don't have to hustle, you don't have to, well, a little bit, but you don't have to hustle in this rat race kind of way. This thread that I see running through everything that you are talking about is people. It's people, 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 and then staying close to the Lord. I love this. So take us through this. You went to, I'm thinking about people, and then how this kind of played out in your life as you're going along, and you went on a mission, and then this whole testimony piece, that the people, the testimony, all of these things weaving through being an actor. You served a mission in Barcelona, Spain, I believe, and then you've used that Spanish. I understand you're like almost like a native speaker. ¿Es verdad?
Yeah. Sí, es verdad. Sí. ¿Lo hablas tú o no?
Un poquito.
Ah, vale. Yeah, I lived in Spain. This is because I always have to, when I'm giving the story to cab drivers and others, I lived in Spain for a couple of years as a young man, talking about Jesus. Yeah. My wife and I right now are serving as service missionaries in a Spanish-speaking ward. They call it the inner city, and it's Sandy, Utah. So the mean streets of White City. Actually, those are the meanest streets in Sandy, but they're not mean at all. I've kept it, when I was called to serve in Spain, my brother had served a couple of years earlier in southern France in the Toulouse mission, Toulouse, Geneva, Switzerland, and my mission was northern Spain. So parts of our mission actually overlapped each other, which was kind of cool. But he got the exotic, wonderful French, and I got the useful, practical, still speak it 30 plus years later, Spanish. And I love it. In fact, to kind of answer your question and tie it all together. Now, this is a nice, pretty little package, example package. My dream has always been to act in a Spanish language narrative of some sort of something, anything. You can cast me as the American who speaks Spanish, whatever it is, great. A few years ago, my agent in Los Angeles, who's LDS, submitted me for an Amazon Prime series that was looking for a DEA agent who was tall, late 40s, kind of fun, could speak fluent Spanish. And I read the description and I went, I'm their man.
Yes.
Fast forward through a couple of auditions and callbacks and just kind of meetups. And they are enamored because I'm speaking Spanish. I said, I don't have to sound like I'm from Spain. And they said, oh, we love it. We could add that to the story. That's so cool. Meanwhile, as I'm meeting with them and we're talking and they're putting together a contract and my dreams are coming true, I'm going to be speaking Spanish as a gringo in an Amazon Prime series, which is going to make our year, financially. And I'm like, we're shooting in Mexico City. I'm going to be down there for 2 months. They're going to put me in a nice hotel. They've got a limo to the set, all of these things. And I still haven't seen a script. I've only seen, a few of the sides that are given at auditions. And I'm like, this is a show about a drug enforcement agent and drugs and crime in Mexico. My spidey senses are tingling, like it feels like it's going to be a little grittier than, quite honestly, I could justify in my, what do you do for a living as a librarian construct, right? Do you say things as a plumber that that can only take me so far before my spiritual side says, all right, Scott, enough with the justification. So anyway,
yeah.
So I said to my agent, you got to get us a script. I have to see before I sign. If I ink this contract, and it was in my hands, and my wife and I are like, no, we're like, this is going to be so cool. Finally, they send over not just a script, they send over, I think it was 10 episodes of scripts. And I really didn't need to see more than the first one. I opened up the first one, and as I always do with any script that's sent, I go to the search field and I start typing in naughty words.
That's genius.
Just to see what, because I know, and it's not what my character will or won't say. It's also just, what is this going to be? Total TV MA, R-rated? Because I unequivocally draw the line there. Sorry. The only show that I was ever in that was R-rated was about Porter Rockwell. How it got an R, and it was back in 1989. And they rated it R, and we're all like, it's a church historical movie. So anyway, and then another one with Kiefer Sutherland that I was hired the day before. Their actor that had the part couldn't do it. Can you come do it? And so I'm like, and I read my lines, and I went, oh, I guess. And they're like, hurry. And I'm like, it's Kiefer Sutherland. It's a big movie. And so I did. I said the S word in it, and I felt so bad. I thought, no one ever watched that, please. That's got me, Brother Claflin. That's my last name, Claflin. I don't know if you remember that, Connie. Christopher's my middle name. Yeah, it's Scott Claflin. Anyway, I'm so ADHD right now. So anyway,
it's beautiful though, coming on back. So you're looking at that, you search
looking at the script. I've search fielded the bad words, and I don't speak Mexican Spanish. And so I only put in English words. And one came back that was like, never, ever
No.
going to say that if I can help it in my
Yeah.
real life as a librarian or anywhere. And I thought, oh no. And it was my character. And then I decided to just look up bad Mexican Spanish words, and
Yeah.
it was littered with them. I went, I've never heard those in Spain before. They don't use those there. And so, I mean, within 2 minutes, I was on the phone with my agent, and I said, it's not going to happen. And they were heartbroken. Well, we love you. You got to do this. I said, well, if you want me to do it, you need to change things. I said, it wouldn't be that hard. You could just change. None of these words actually matter. They have nothing to do with the script. You could even make my character a goody two shoes if you want. Make him a Mormon. I mean, nowadays, that's kind of a cool little cachet. He's a seasoned Texas DEA agent who also happens to be an LDS bishop. I mean, talk about conflict, and they said, oh no. I mean, the writers are very jealous of their work and very protective. And they said, we're not going to change anything for an actor. And so we parted ways. And so, like I say, to kind of bring all of those elements you talked about together, the acting, the God part, the integrity, the Spanish, that was it for me. And it was funny. I thanked and praised the Lord for showing me, for letting me see the scripts before I signed anything. I mean, that's what I walked away with. I was heartbroken, but I was happy.
And at peace. Oh,
yeah.
And to think what would have happened had you inked that paper. That was inspired. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And look, you're able to move forward and have other opportunities and experiences.
Other stuff.
And there's other stuff to do. And you can sleep at night and be like, I'm not worried about who's going to be watching that, right? I just love the way that you have approached this. And I know our time is short. I wish we could do another hour. This is the best. It's just been so fun to go down.
Are we done? It's over? Can we go to part 2? I've answered like one of your questions.
I would love to know. I always am interested to know how the wives feel about this. How did your wife take this path? How did she respond to this? And how has this ride been for her?
It's interesting. That's a great question. We are so symbiotic. She is the complete opposite of me. That whole 1 + 1 = 3 or more really applies to our marriage. There's not a shred of professional competition. I always assumed that I would marry, Gwyneth Paltrow, someone like that. I would marry an actress, an actor, a female actor, whatever we call them these days, an actor that's a woman. I always thought that would be the perfect match. And honestly, I know there are some couples that have made it work, but my wife is scared to death, not only of public speaking, of acting, of doing voice work or reading anything. She's nervous for me because I'm also a public speaker. That's what I've done the last 30 years or so, among other things, to kind of stay afloat and to provide for a family. That's how she dealt with it. Is she said, well, I love you and I'll marry you. I know you're going to be an actor. Her parents were like scared, but I said, I trust the Lord, things will work out. And within very short order, I was finishing my degree. I was getting regular jobs, but all of those jobs, they were in radio, they were in television, they were writing or presenting. It all kind of flowed around the talent that I have, that I've been given. I don't know what it is, but
you got a sweet deal either way. That is so great that you both have enjoyed this ride together, and you can feel that even way back in the day. You could feel that with the two of you.
Very supportive.
Two peas in a pod going down the same path, and you were locked and loaded for whatever that was going to bring. And look what it brought. All of these life experiences, your testimony strengthened, you're serving as service missionaries now together in the Spanish-speaking ward. All of these things, at the end of the day, Scott, I can't help but feel that these threads, we've just kind of gone on this ride with you and come to this place of what matters at the end of the day is the people, God, our love of him, our love of each other, and the way that we've lived our lives as we've gone through sharing our testimony and our talents in a way that would be pleasing to him. Any last thoughts for those that are listening to help them on their call to create journey?
just to be 100% true to what you know and have felt and believed, that truly the perspective of the great plan of salvation does not, when it says you can't take it with you, well, it doesn't say that, but we anecdotally say you can't take it with you. We automatically assume kind of that we're talking about the money, the jewelry, the cars, the boats. And while that is true, there's a lot of other things you can't take with you. I believe the desire for those things, I guess what I should say is that this ability that I have, or that we each have our own little gifts. They do carry on through eternity, but their worldly importance does not. That's what I mean to say. So, because I mean, right now in my life, I'm at a point where more than ever, I'm like reevaluating, do I really care about being in stuff? I mean, that's always been the case, but it's sort of like even more now. It's like, no, it doesn't really matter. It's just fun. But is life about fun? No, it's about service. It's about loving others, reaching out, making a difference. If what I can do somehow makes a difference, that brings me the gratification and joy. If it doesn't, it's very hollow and empty. And that's kind of what I would say is find what it is you're passionate about. So edit out that other junk and find what it is you're passionate about, and hopefully what you're passionate about does make a difference, even if it's minute and small and local. And then go after that.
You take those things he's given you, you put it out there to do good, you keep your values and keep based in what you know to be true and his word, and it will all work itself out if you just keep doing those things. I love this. Scott, this has been pure joy. I know people who are listening are going to want to connect with you. What's the best way for them to do that?
To connect with me? I mean, Scott Christopher on Facebook or LinkedIn or any of those places. Or you know what? You can go to scottchristopher.net, and I have a little website there, and there's my email and stuff. So
connect.
Yeah.
Great.
I get a lot of spam that way too, but as long as you're legit.
It's good. I love it. That is so fabulous and so you. Scott, literally such a joy to reconnect from all those years ago. That's like 30 something years. I don't even want to count. That was a long time ago and a galaxy far, far away. But what a joy to reconnect. So good to see you. Thank you so much.
You're certainly welcome. Thanks, Connie.
And for our listeners, if you've enjoyed this interview today, like I have not laughed so hard in so long, check out our other interviews. We are so excited to bring you people like Steve Young, Jane Clayson Johnson, John Heater, who are sharing their steps in their journey of being called to create to help you be successful in yours.